Well, I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I think if you look at the history of Senor Petro, he was very successful in Congress. He fought against the parapolitica and the paramilitaries, and he was fearless, and he was an important voice for democracy, it seems, in that period. He was mayor of Bogota. He was elected mayor of Bogota. He wasn't very successful at running Bogota. I think most people agree that things didn't work very well. He concentrated his efforts on his social base, poor people and whatever. And so I think we don't really know what's going to happen. I'm not sure I know what's going to happen in terms of his policies and the implementation of his policies and how he's going to prioritize different things. I think, there's some things that, probably I think, are not a good idea, such as undermining the autonomy of the central bank, But on the other hand, he wants to change things, and he wants to try to move Colombia in a more inclusive direction. And one could look at the specific policies and argue about whether I thought the policies were good or bad or whatever. But I think the general effort, is a good effort. Colombia has to change. It has to change, and I think what you've seen, and so Gustavo Petro can, and you may disagree with it, or my personal view is that there's lots of problems with the details, but something has to happen, and that's what's on offer, and if I can, so I don't know that I understand enough about what he really intends to do to kind of make predictions, but I do understand why people are voting for him. My reading of the news over the last few months is that, if this is a leftist government, it will be leftist with Colombian characteristics. Look, President Senor Petro has been making deals with all sorts of people, from Roy Barreras to Benedetti, meeting his brother, meeting with Ivan Moreno and the Clan Montes, so there's something very traditional Colombian going on here also. So I wouldn't, overestimate. I think this is a very different government. It will be a very different government from the first, PT government in Brazil, or President, or President Boric's government in Chile. I would say it will have many Colombian characteristics. So that will make it much less radical than many people fear, I would think. Yeah, I think it's a massive overreaction. First of all, Senor Petro won't have the military. The only reason what happened in Venezuela could happen is because President Chavez controlled the military, and the military had a huge stake in what's happened. And that's not going to be true in Colombia. So I wouldn't worry about that. For me, this was I'm sure he's not even popular in the military, as a former guerrillero. So I think I think Colombia is a very different country from Venezuela. Also, Colombians are different. It's kind of socially conservative. Senor Petro never did that. He's been elected to Congress. He was elected mayor of Bogota. So give him some credit, Mixture of inclusive and extractive institutions, you could say. So while Colombia in many ways remains extractive, it's also become more democratic in many ways, and traditional political machines have broken down, and there's much more political fluidity, and that sort of combines, these two things combined create enormous opportunities for political entry and political entrepreneurs, as we see in the runoff of because there's huge grievances in society. There's a lot of people who feel they have nothing to lose, and suddenly they have much more political voice than they ever had before in Colombia's history. And that's a very difficult situation to handle. Many people talk about these different political options in the presidency as sort of extreme, on the one hand, one candidate wants to close Congress and the other candidate, wants to, change institutions, the central bank, and has kind of radical policies. And, there's many people in the Colombian establishment who are sort of horrified at the options, but for many people are in poverty, on the borderline of poverty. What do you have to lose? That you're just desperate for a change and you're desperate for something different, and there's no downside. Brought this into, allowed this to happen. My view is it's been coming for 20 years. It's not something surprising. It's something that's been on the way for 20 years, the collapse of the party system. When President Uribe, in some sense, killed off the party system, you have all these new parties, but not institutionalized. Traditional liberal and conservative networks, collapsed, much more fluidity, and that's combined with a political class that just doesn't understand the country. Like President Santos, while on the one hand, in one wing of the Palacio Nariño, Sergio Jaramillo was negotiating peace with the guerrilla. In the other wing, President Santos was handing out mermelada, to the machine politicians. That there's no conception that the country has to change or things have to be done differently. Sergio Jaramillo got it. Some people got it, but the political class didn't really get it. The Bogotano political class didn't really get it. And so this is what you have. I mean, it's just inevitable.